This episode of Through the Pain is brought to you by Unleashing Royalty, a royal formula to help you walk into queendom with purpose. Available on Amazon and BarnesandNobles.com. Hello and welcome to the Through the Pain podcast. This is a place for chronic pain and chronic illness warriors to dare, dance, and dream through the pain. Hello, Through the Pain audience. Today I have with me Wunmi Bakare. She is the director of the WBPR agency, and she is a sickle cell survivor. And we're going to chop it up. We're going to have a conversation today. And I just wanted to, first of all, welcome you and thank you for gracing me with your presence. Could you please say hello to the Through the Pain family?
Hi, Through the Pain family. Yeah, thanks for that really kind and sweet introduction. I feel like special. I feel like someone important now.
You are
like
important.
I just want to be a girlfriend.
But you are important. Like you've written, we're going to get to it later, but you've written important articles about sickle cell disease in Essence magazine. And you've talked about your experience with sickle cell, and we're going to get into that. But please tell me, let's start off with, when were you diagnosed with sickle cell? And please tell the audience your experience.
I was diagnosed at 18 months. I'm Nigerian, so I was born in Lagos, Nigeria, born and raised. I've only been in the US for give or take, I want to say about 13 years now. As you know, I'm sure you know this, Nigeria has one of the highest sickle cell populations in the world. But even though we have the highest patient population, there isn't a lot of research on curative therapies or even medications like hydroxyurea, talk less of oxybralta. So growing up, I will say that I survived sickle cell because of my pediatrician, who also is my aunt. She's related to me. So I think she didn't let me die. Like my care was always important to her because I've been having surgeries since I was 7. So I think for me, my sickle cell diagnosis was a slightly more complicated and serious than most. I've met some sickle cell patients who are managing their symptoms just fine, haven't required any surgery or anything major. But I think I've been having crises since as far back as being like 3 or 4. I caught a salmonella infection when I was 7 from meat. So we have this delicacy we call it like suya. In Nigeria, it's like the only way I can compare it is like kebab, like chicken or beef kebab, but it's made from meat. And I caught a salmonella infection from that. That was basically it was like the infection was eating on my bones in both arms. And so at 7, I had osteomyelitis surgery on both my left and right arm. Was out of school for about 3 months. And again, I think I genuinely think I'm only alive today because of my aunt. She made sure that I got next level care. She was always available to me. So were her doctors and her team. And then when I came to the US, I had just turned 16 for college, and I went to school at the University of Texas at Austin. So I went, in my decision in picking a school, I wanted to go to a state that was similar to, like, the weather was similar to my home country. But what I didn't account for was the fact that I would have no support. So imagine being an international student, fresh off with an accent. Everyone is already, I went to a school with a 4% Black population. So being an international student was an anomaly within itself. And then navigating having sickle cell disease. So I think I've survived a lot. I've dealt with pain all of my life, even now that and I don't know if I should mention this formally, but I got a stem cell transplant done at the NIH in 2019. But I got it done at 32. So I'm still dealing with a lot of the debilitating symptoms that were caused by having sickle cell, like AVN and iron overload, So my health has just been super complex, very hard to navigate. I still encounter what I will describe as a sickle cell pain crisis, even though I'm post-transplant. So the goal of everything I'm sharing is because I don't want anyone to feel like they're alone. And I think in my experience, I feel very, very alone a lot of times because within the sickle cell community, I'm very grateful that before I did my transplant, I had friends, like I had a sickle cell tribe within the community. But it's weird because now post-transplant, I feel like the sheep that's left the flock, because it's like that survivor's guilt of, I know people who have died from participating in a curative therapy. I also know people who have done it and their disease has come back or something else has happened or it didn't work. And I know, like other patients that are still dealing with sickle cell and don't have the opportunity to either like get a transplant or do gene editing or gene therapy. So for me, a lot of the experiences I'm going through, I feel very alone in that process. And before I even embarked on the transplant journey, I didn't want to talk to the specialists or the doctors because as someone that has sickle cell disease, firsthand, the doctors know the science, but we know the pain, right? So they can only advise and give us suggestions of what they think we should do, but they're not in our shoes. So I wanted to speak to a patient and I was getting a lot of resistance because patients were like, well, as soon as I got my transplant and I started feeling better, I wanted to kind of block out that traumatic experience of my life. And so for me, there was a lot of just, I want to talk to someone that's done it. I want to know what I'm signing myself up for. And there was no content. There wasn't any information out there. So when I did my transplant, I made it kind of my mission that everything I wanted to uncover but couldn't, I would do that so that prospective patients or caregivers would have something, some resource, some content, something to serve as like a guide for them. So that's a little bit of a synopsis of kind of my dealings with sickle cell. I won't say we're besties, but we tolerate each other.
You mentioned a lot in your synopsis, and one thing that stood out to me is that you said you still have symptoms of sickle cell disease. So could you tell me a little bit about your experience before the transplant and post-transplant? What's the difference?
I would say post-transplant, I have better days. There are more better days than dark days. But on the days that are bad, there's confusion for me as the patient. So I'll start with like different issues, right? So before, I used to have really frequent vaso-occlusive crises. I was on hydroxyurea for about a decade. But for me, it didn't have the impact that most sickle cell patients, the success that most sickle cell patients have had with it. I was still having vaso-occlusive crises. And so I would be in the hospital, I would say about 6 or 7 times a year on average. About, let's say the shortest stay would be like 5, the longest would be like 10 to 14. So I would say those have stopped, meaning the ER staff don't know me well and the floor staff don't know me as well as they used to before. But in terms of the sickle pain, all of my triggers with sickle cell are still my triggers now. The problem now is I am 34. So my body has lived with sickle cell for 32 years, and I've only had an immune system for 2 years. So my mind and my body are very much connected. So now I have to do the hard work of psyching my mind to know and telling myself that I no longer have this. So the pain I feel, I do what I need to do in terms of taking my meds and resting and things, but I have to consciously make that effort to say, I know it feels like a crisis, but the team is saying it's not a crisis, so it'll get better. So so that's one of the kind of the nuances of transplant that they don't talk to you about is we know sickle cell anemia is a progressively bad, like as you get older, your symptoms get worse. It's just the reality of sickle cell. So I always tell people, like, if you can get a transplant when you're young, your bounce back rate is a lot quicker than when you're older. when, you know, your joints have had impacts to them, you know, with AVN, your organs, there's been organ damage, tissue damage, you've had surgeries. If you do it when you're younger, then your bounce back is quicker. So now with my pain, it doesn't last as long, but going into the transplant, one of the reasons I did this is so that I wouldn't live a life that's chronicled by pain. And I think because that's one of the primary symptoms of having sickle cell disease is chronic pain, it was like a virus. It spread into all aspects of my life, personal and professional, in terms of like how I would be, you know, if I'm anxious about something, if I'm pitching for a meeting, that anxiety would make me start sickling, you know what I mean? Like high pressure, high stress situations. Those situations are still happening now, but it's just me telling my body, hey, take a breath, calm down. You've taken the meds, you've done what you need to do, it'll go in time. And if it's still persisting, then speak to my care specialist and say, this thing is still persisting. I think we need to run my bloods. I think something else is going on. So it's more self-advocacy now than it was. I mean, it was still that way before, but I think before, because I had the diagnosis, my hematologist or at least the ER doctors will just do my care plan. Now, I don't have sickle cell. So who takes care of me? A hematologist is like, well, I don't really know what to do with you. You don't have sickle cell. You know what I mean? And then it's kind of like, where do we fall in after that care? I did my transplant at the NIH. So my primary physician is at the NIH, but I need someone in Seattle. So it's just one of those things where I think realistically speaking, I went into this thinking pain would be in my rearview mirror and a thing of the past, but now it's still showing up. And then in getting to meet other patients who have had sickle cell, who had their transplant over the age of 30, I'm starting to realize we're all experiencing this. It's just in varying degrees. You know, I spoke to a gentleman the other day and he was like, I've been fine. I haven't even required pain meds. And then it snowed. And then I was like, why am I sickling? He's like, I did this procedure like 3 years ago. Why am I sickling? You know, but again, it's one of those mind over matter things. And you just need to do the right thing and hope it resolves within like a reasonable time frame.
So how do you mentally deal with the mind over matter moments that you're describing? Like, how do you, it must be very frustrating and taxing on your mental health. How do you navigate through it?
If I'm totally honest, I will say two things right now: journaling and a therapist. So when you do a transplant, they always assign you a therapist because you're kind of navigating two identities. You know, I always use the analogy of like a parent. When you are a mom, even when your child grows up and they go to college, you never stop. You don't switch off that mom switch, right? Same thing if you have a child and your child passes. It doesn't turn off automatically. It stays with you. So with sickle cell, you're kind of trying to figure out your new identity when you've done your procedure. Because now it's like, who am I? I was defined by this thing for a lot of my life. So like, what is my new life going to look like? What are the things I can do? So because of that, they recommend you see a therapist, you know, and they'll do a lot of like behavioral and psychoanalysis to kind of figure out where you lie and how much support you need. And I think because I'm Nigerian, I think the African community or POC community as a whole, were very resistant to mental health, anything in the mental health space, because we're just kind of like, we don't understand it. We'll rather not like touch on it. So initially I will say like my overall perspective, I was like, mental health, I don't know how I feel about seeing a therapist. Like, oh, does that mean I'm crazy? But the reality is that on my worst days, when I'm by myself and I'm in tears and I'm like, did I trade one illness for another? Did I do the right thing? Did I make the right decision? I made my decision because there was an air of desperation, but there was also, I wanted a better quality of life. So when I'm dealing with those really bad days, if I don't write it down to at least process some of that, then it becomes just an overall heaviness. And we know that like when you have sickle cell, even the least amount of stress your disease is like, hi, I'm right here, you know? So I'm always like keeping that in mind now, that even when I'm really, really stressed, I need to find a way to like strategically deal with it. So either I'll journal or I'll listen to music. I'm a very spiritual person, so God is like my bestie. Sometimes we have chats where I'm just kind of like, Jesus, I don't know what you're doing, but I need you to do something because this sucks, you know? Or I lean on people that I know within the sickle cell community that I know if I talk to, they get it. Because I think more than anything else, sometimes when you don't feel as alone, it kind of helps you navigate things a little bit better. So at least in my experience, that's what it is. My mental health stuff is something that's very private to me. I've never been comfortable necessarily speaking on that subject with a lot of people. So I just keep it to God and my therapist. I'm like, they're vaults. They'll keep it to themselves. But yeah.
You were quoted in your Essence article, which was amazing, by the way, and the link is in the show notes and the description below. You were quoted in saying, sickle cell is the rock on which I built my imperfect life. Now, do you still feel that way post-transplant?
Yes. I think it informs everything I do. I'm thinking, when you have sickle cell, you don't really have a choice in the matter. Or I'll say any rare disease, any invisible disability. It's on your mind whether you like it or not. It's a deciding factor in how you dress, where you go, what you eat, what you do. So even now, post-transplant, I would say when I'm Googling places to go on vacation, I'm not saying which hotel is closest to the ER. But at the same time, I'm cautious of where I'm going because I don't want to be in a situation that something will trigger something and then I'm in a foreign country. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I think when you have an invisible disability that people can't see just by looking at you, right? You kind of develop some like character traits where you're very protective, but you're also incredibly empathetic and compassionate towards what other people are experiencing. So for me, I choose to see the pluses instead of the minuses. You know what I mean? Like if I didn't have sickle cell, then the way in which I communicate with people wouldn't be heartfelt. I wouldn't exude the passion that I have, but I do it because a lot of sickle cell patients, a lot of people battling that disease were counted out a lot of times because our lifespan is supposed to be short, right? Our disease is supposed to get the best of us. So we kind of navigate the world always wanting to prove ourselves, prove that we're at the top of our game. And even though we do that, it's also kind of a positive because it means we don't necessarily believe in excuses, but we also see the world in different ways. Before there was virtual learning and remote work, we were doing that from a hospital bed. You know what I mean? We were in meetings, we were delivering on work and assignments the way anyone else. It might take us time, but we were doing that. So for me, those forward-thinking traits that like it's instilled in me is things I still carry today with me, even post-transplant.
So you have created a platform called #SickleCellProdigy. Please let me know. Well, I already know because I read your article. What inspired you to start this platform?
So years ago, like every year, the sickle cell community faced another devastating loss. But when it's with celebrities who have outwardly and openly spoken about their experiences, I think we cling to them more because a part of us feels like we are the falling soldiers, the ones that people we're the underdogs, right? That people tend to bypass all the time. So when a celebrity is using their platform for that, it means more to us. So when he passed away, I'm a hip hop head, like always been. So when he passed away, I think, I remember I was on a call for Sickle Cell 101 at the time. I was handling their PR. And we were having this discussion and people were asking like, how do we honor the memory of this man? And I was like, wait a second. His stage name was Prodigy. We're all prodigies because we are battling a disease that like from the moment we're born, doctors and people are already counting us out. And we're still navigating different fields. There's no sickle cell patient that I've met that's like, oh, I'm just very comfortable being mundane and, just kind of coasting through life. We're all doing different things. You're in the pageant world. I'm in PR. I've met, Jadena and Janelle Monet is one of their producers, whose younger brother died from sickle cell, and he owns One Blood, which is a nonprofit that does a lot of work, but he's in the music industry. We're all navigating these things. And that's when I was like, wait a second, hashtag sickle cell prodigy, because we're beyond warriors at this point. Because most people are like, you're a sickle cell warriors. We're beyond that. We are doing things now that generations will still feel our legacy and our impact. We're doing things now to make sure they don't experience the biases we experience, the false representation of what sickle cell is or who sickle cell affects. So how dare we not call ourselves sickle cell prodigies? So that was kind of how it started. And I think now what makes me so proud is just seeing people from like all parts of the world that are like, I'm beyond a warrior at this point. Like, yes, that's a common term, but I'm a prodigy because I'm trailblazing in my own unique way. And I'm happy to share my legacy, within the community. So.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about something you don't even know that I was planning to do.
Jesus.
So your article was called Surviving Sickle Cell. And as you know, Through the Pain we have a gear line, merch line, a hashtag Through the Pain, and we define we have different words like dance through the pain, live through the pain, so on and so forth. But I wanted to commemorate you and your awesome life and the fact that you have survived through the pain. We want to commemorate the Survived Through the Pain shirt after you. So you will be having your own Through the Pain shirt. And yeah, so by the time this airs, we'll be selling it, and proceeds of the shirt sale will go to your charity of choice. So congratulations.
Yay! Thank you. That makes me very excited.
Yeah.
The charity, I don't even have to think too much about it. I talk about this all the time, and I think you even know of her. Jasmine Rivera, that passed away, that used to run Beauty Within Sickle Cell. Even though she's gone, and she participated in a transplant and passed from complications of that transplant. I think of her every day. And I think I'm so proud that her mom, even with everything that family has experienced, her mom still works with the consortium, because I'm just kind of like, we need people like you that are still continuing on and building on your child's legacy. And I also think it's so important to reflect the Latinx, I think the correct term, the PC term is Latinx community, because a lot of people sometimes just assume sickle cell only affects people of African and African-American descent. So the Jasmine Rivera Initiative under the Sickle Cell Consortium is definitely where I want this funds to go. I wanted to support another young sickle cell patients business. I really do.
Well, thank you. That, I know Jasmine's mom, she's doing amazing work with the consortium, and I know she'll be glad to hear that. So on a lighter note, what's next for you? Like, what plans do you have with your agency? I know you've already done big things. What's next for you?
I think where I am now is my hope and prayer is to take this back home. For me, everything starts there. Lagos isn't just my home. I've been admitted in almost every private and public hospital in the country, and specifically in that city. That just shows you how ill I've been over the course of my life. So for me, at the heart of everything I do, I'm thinking of my privilege. I'm thinking of the fact that I was in a position where my parents could send me to school abroad, but I'm thinking for those children that are born in the villages and remote locations that don't even have access to like a doctor, talk less of a hematologist, like a specialist in sickle cell disease. So my hope is that we'll get to a point where these curative therapies can be replicated in my home country, because if we have the highest patient population in the world, then we need it, and we needed it yesterday. So I'm hoping that life gets me to a place where I'm working with the people that, one, have access to the funds to fully realize this, and two, to be able to go back and do that, whether it's by an application or, you look at cases and see who's the most urgent, who needs to be treated, because I'm so tired of us like back home saying like we don't have medical infrastructure, and then people that have privilege or advantages are flying to India and South Africa for healthcare, when we have the doctors, we have credible doctors, we just don't have these curative therapies available. So for me, that's my ultimate goal. I think every day I pray for that. It's something I want to do. It's something I just feel like it's my purpose and calling. So that's the end goal for me, at least. That's the future, we hope.
And it's not like we don't have the talented doctors, because most of the doctors that graduate in medical school here in the US are mostly Nigerian. So we have the smarts, we do have access to the technology. It's just getting it there getting it home is the thing. Wunmi Bakare, thank you so much.
You are most welcome. I'm so glad we did this.
And I'm looking forward to seeing more from you. And thank you for joining us.
You are welcome. Thanks, guys.
For tools, merchandise, and additional information, log on to our website, www.throughthepain.org. This has been a Public Praise Media production.